for our subjects and what is not. And what is good, we have to encourage them to do, facilitate them to do. And what is bad, we have to stop, to protect them. That is the true meaning of a leader.
Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Our first guest speaker will give us more insight into the current situation. Dr. Stephen Schneider is a professor of interdisciplinary environmental studies at Stanford University, a senior fellow at the Woods Institute for the Environment, and the founder and editor of the interdisciplinary journal Climate Change. He has also contributed to all 4 of the reports of the Nobel Prize-winning United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Stephen Schneider.
Thank you very much, Victoria and Brian, and thank all of you for coming. It's my task today to try in a short time to sketch out a large number of aspects of the climate change issue. And let me begin by saying, before we try to figure out how to fix it, we got to make sure something's broken. I'm asked all the time, whether talking to Congress or members of Parliament, or ministers or media, and also just talking to plain folks, well, is the science of global warming settled? Very standard question. And I always like to try it out on my audiences and see where they are, so we know where we're going to be. I was in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago and asked them, and maybe 70% of people, when I said, not every detail, but the basic ideas, raised their hands. And I tried it in Oklahoma, and maybe only 7% raised their hands. And had the same information. So people have different perceptions. So with this group, how many here think that the science of global warming is largely settled and well understood affair? Okay, a fair number. How many think it's not? How many think it's a dumb question? Right. And the reason for that is whenever we're talking about a complex issue like climate change, or where you're talking about healthcare or delivery of services for sustainable development, there is no single answer. There's a large number of possibilities. And in climate system science, there are components that are well established, where we really do have settled science. I'll give you a few examples. There are components where we've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 possibilities, where we have competing explanations, and there are components that are speculative. And unfortunately, out there in the very confusing public debate, there are interests that deliberately grab a serious, well-established piece of information and state it as the only thing, end of the world, certainty, and then somebody else from, say, an enterprise institute who says, but carbon dioxide, that's a fertilizer of green plants, it's good for you. It's true, it is a fertilizer of green plants, and that also includes weeds, and it also acidifies the ocean, and they forget to tell you that. So you get a parade of end of the world and good for you extremes, which in my view are the 2 lowest probability outcomes. What real scientists do is they separate out into multi-possible outcomes, a wide range of possibilities, and then we assign confidence to these. So what we do is called risk analysis. What can happen multiplied times the probability? That's a scientist's job. Whether or not you want to take those risks with the planetary life support system, and whether you care more about protecting sustainability, you care more about protecting short-term return on investment in the coal industry, those are value judgments. Those are not science questions. And those are risk management. And very often out there in the public debate, they get completely confused. And as we all know, when you deal in the world of advocacy, what's the most leads to those trial lawyer jokes, right? It's not my job to make my opponent's case. And very often that's exactly what so much of the public hears. It hears this, I'm sorry to say, fraudulent debate between end of the world and good for you, instead of framing it the way the scientific community does, which is multiple outcomes, many of which have serious side effects that people need to consider. So with that frame, let me move quickly through the program and try to show you some examples of well-established science and some of the other kinds. So first, into a new line of work and into something more sustainable. That calls for two acts of good governance, not just protecting the commons, but being fair. So we've got to do both. We can, but we have to work at it, and we have to find cooperative solutions, or there'll be no hope. Okay. What about the fact that I said we're not going to be able to avoid 1 to 2 more degrees no matter what we do? I don't see any way we can avoid a hazardous overshoot period.
Our deep appreciation conference here in Sweden and in Europe. We are getting prepared for the big climate summit in Copenhagen, Denmark. So it's very handy that you organize a conference about climate change. So you in the US also can get prepared for action for the climate. Because we all know that the situation is very, very crucial. It's not only a matter of putting pressure on the politicians, it's also a matter on what you and I can do. And I think there is a lot we can do.
Experiencing the problems of climate change. In my own constituency, there was a terrible drought this year. And just when the government had come to grips with it, it turned into an unseasonal flood. The farmers lost everything. The lentils I eat, regarded as a staple in England, are now so expensive that they have become a luxury. We have no rain, no water, increasing heat, drying rivers, and dying people. Do you feel powerless as an individual to stop the world from dying? Let me explain how you and I can turn this around immediately. Methane and carbon dioxide are greenhouse gases, which means that their presence in the air traps heat and affects the Earth's temperature and climate, making the planet warmer. As it warms, the climate changes and the glaciers melt. When the